Hi, this is Priya Virmani in London, and today I have with me Sanam. Hi Sanam.
Hi Priya.
Thanks for joining me today. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Sanam Arora. I am the president of the National Indian Students and Alumni Union here in the United Kingdom. I am also a financial analyst. I'm a consultant by profession, and I work in the asset management industry.
Sanam, did you vote in the recent Brexit vote?
I did, yes.
And how has, we're just over a month now since the vote, how has the result impacted you?
So I think when I voted, and I'm quite happy to admit it, I voted for us to remain in the EU because I believe both from a financial perspective as well as from a wider sort of geopolitical stability perspective, it was good to remain. However, the majority, even though it was a slight majority, voted to have the Brexit, and so we're all Brexiteers now, in the words of our Prime Minister. How has it impacted us? There are various ways in which this has impacted. You know, if you look at the way the markets have reacted from a financial perspective, I think the figures were released today. So for the asset management industry, just as an example, we've seen the highest level of outflows.
That's your industry where you work.
That's my industry where I work. So we've seen the highest level of outflows ever in the second quarter of the financial year.
So this is a historic.
This is a historic low. That's the UK-based asset managers seeing outflows in the second quarter of the financial year. The pound also hit a historic low since 1985. I think it was the lowest low it's ever seen. So financially, obviously, it's been quite turbulent, and that turbulence is set to remain. I remember before Brexit, the rupee to pound rate was about just under 100 to a pound, whereas it's now stable at about 86, 87, which for a lot of NRIs like myself is not a very good thing, but obviously for India it's a good thing. So there's pros and cons. But speaking from a purely UK perspective, the financial impact, as the City of London voted overwhelmingly to remain, is quite obvious. Taking it on its head, then the education view or the university view, which is my other life, it's overwhelmingly negative in the sense that there's a lot of funding overall that UK universities receive, particularly the Erasmus scheme from the European Union. There are all these benefits, research benefits, industry academic links that UK students as well as international students gain from having access to the European Union and its network of academic resources, and the loss of that cumulatively has been it hasn't impacted yet, but that impact is yet to come, and whether it's a big bang impact or whether it's a slow impact over a few years, the impact will be negative, or it'll be a worse position as we expect than it has been previously. Specifically from an Indian student perspective, those students who come over from India and are categorized as international students, we foresee that there may be a short-term gain, because there is the expectation somewhat that maybe visa rules will ease, because the UK government does not, from an immigration perspective, have any control over EU immigration, which is part of the reason Brexit has happened, which is the part I actually do agree with, the one part of Brexit that I do agree with, which is this borderless immigration. Having said that, that has meant that the only bit it has had control over is the international band or width of immigration, and within that students are the easiest to play with, you know, because at the end of the day it's a numbers game. It's obviously not translated into a lot of reduction in immigration, but from an Indian student perspective, the expectation is that maybe there will be a short-term positive gain, in that there will be a level playing field. You will either be a home student or you won't. And this EU student category that leads to a lot of problems, such as the removal of the post-study work visa will actually get removed. But overall, my personal take on this is that, you know, it's not necessarily the best outcome for the country.
And how do you feel personally, being a resident of this country, living here? How do you now feel personally here?
I don't think practically I feel any different to what I felt before Brexit. There were a few incidents that I unfortunately witnessed myself straight after, you know, the day after or the day of the vote being coming through, and they were very racist, sort of driven, negative, anti-immigration
Would
type
you like to
incidents.
share an incident?
Yes, so I mean, I was on the tube once and I saw this heavily pregnant Asian woman being told to take herself and her unborn baby back home because Brexit had happened, and so they were coming for her next. Now, I don't know who they in that context means.
That's worrying. And prior to this Brexit vote, had you ever encountered any such racism that would be at par with this example?
No, I haven't personally encountered any racism before, or in fact seen any such counts of racism, but I have heard such incidents happening. Now, whether it was just that minority who are racist coming ahead because their hopes of, because they were just too happy after Brexit, and therefore it being out
Gave
in
them
the
the
public.
license to
Yeah, I mean, but
have an outburst.
yeah, but I don't think that racism is at the heart of what's happened here. I think it's purely a fear of, a fear that has grown on just false allegations and misleading
Or a
accusations.
displaced fear in some ways.
Precisely.
And how do you envisage us here as a country, and especially London and yourself, going forward? How do you see this unfolding, the whole result, for yourself?
I frankly don't see it in unfolding in any form or shape right now, and that's potentially an ignorant view, but there isn't enough information out there at the moment. What I can say with conviction is that the way that the UK government has come together in the aftermath of Brexit is absolutely fantastic. No time has been wasted whatsoever. We have a very, very strong-willed Prime Minister who is, often compared to the Iron Lady Thatcher, and in her own right, she is very strong-willed, and we've seen that. And I've personally disagreed, as has the wider international student in the university body, with a lot of decisions she's made in her tenure as Home Secretary. But I do think, being the Prime Minister right now, the way decisions are being taken, the way trade delegations are being sent out, that Brexit means Brexit. We are all Brexiteers now, and we'll deal with it one way or the other, and we'll deal with it the right way. But I think there are things that are happening right now, which is that we don't have a strong opposition at the moment. Labour has sort of fumbled, and the whole sort of fragility that's out there, or volatility out there, with Scotland deciding to leave the UK. If that happens, that will be a very, very sad point in time. But there is no roadmap that has been provided at the moment. No one has that answer. But there's conviction, 100% conviction, that we will deal with this the right way as a nation.
Thank you, Sanam, for joining me today. And this is Dr. Priya Virmani signing off from London.